Livestream show. I'm Rachel Pietsch. This is a show where we showcase amazing Australian women speakers so you get to see the huge amount of talent available, and so we can shift the stats from 30% women speakers at events to 50%. And joining me today is a wonderful Kath Essing. And Kath is a wonderful speaker and author and educator, empowering individuals to connect with the courage to speak their truth. Kath provides solutions for individuals and organisations, cultivating inclusive and empowering environments. She focuses on helping employees reclaim their voices and advocate for themselves, dismantling the narratives that hold them back. Through her program, Shift the Narrative, Kath guides participants in transforming limiting beliefs while enhancing their confidence and communication skills. This fosters open dialogue and a culture of inclusivity, allowing all individuals to speak up courageously. And by empowering employees, we can tackle the mental health challenges arising from feelings of disconnection and ask for support. Sounds fabulous. Welcome to the show, Kath. How are you today?
Thanks. I'm great. Thank you, Rachel. How are you?
I'm great. I'm just glad the sun is shining. But you know, if you go out,
just a little bit.
That's what you get in Melbourne. So tell us what you're about, Kath, because you know that was the formal spiel about what you do. But tell us some more.
Well, I published a book this year called The Courage to Speak Your Truth, and the reason I've done that is because I've worked in our industry for a long time and been a speaker, and I did write a book 10 years ago.
Right.
But there was still something that I hadn't shared with the world, and I feel like I needed to do that before I could sort of hit the next sort of phase of my life and my career. And that was go to the police about childhood sexual abuse that I had held secret for my whole adult life. My family knew, but I'd never been to the police about it. So I've just finished this memoir, and it's about my remembering, reporting and recovering from childhood sexual abuse. And that's really perpetuated a new direction in my business, because we're all carrying a story, aren't we?
Yes, we certainly are. Absolutely. I'm really sorry to hear that you had to go through that.
Thank you. And I'm even more sorry that I'm but I'm a statistic of 1 in 3. So it's, as you said, about let's try and increase the statistics of women on stage. Well, I'd love to decrease the statistics of children enduring this kind of event, and also women being silenced in general about bad behaviour of other people. So I think it's time that we started having more difficult conversations.
Oh, absolutely. So what got you into starting this conversation in the first place?
Interestingly, I aspired to do a TED Talk, and that's, on my bucket list. And I've spent 3 months writing one with a mentor. And when I wrote that speech and delivered it, I was lucky enough to deliver it to a man called Carmen Gallo. So he's written numerous books in America, one of them being Talk Like TED. And when he gave me such incredible feedback, I realized that the talk itself was the blueprint for my book. So I went away for a month and wrote like a crazy creative person. And at the end of the month, I had a book finished that I sent off to several publishers, and chose the one I wanted to work with, which is an all-women's team. And that was 12 months ago. So the book is now in my hot little hands, and in many hot little hands, in fact. So it was a bit of a whirlwind.
Yeah, I bet. It's a very intense process writing a book. And,
It is.
Revisiting, parts of your memories as well is pretty hard going. And you need the support around you to work through that, I would imagine.
Yes. Look, and I think I waited till a time when I was really ready to tell my story from the perspective of healing others, not healing myself. And that, that healing of me took a very long time. Yeah. And so now when I talk about it, it's really about shifting the conversation more than needing any parts of me to be heard or healed. And, I said recently to somebody that, for a long time, as a strong, confident woman with a very, very powerful group of strong, confident women behind her, I still stayed silent because I wanted to curate my story for the comfort of others, more so for the healing of myself.
Yeah.
So that was the major shift, that I think that women particularly have been programmed to stay silent, to make other people comfortable in
Yes.
whatever aspect that is, whether it's in a board meeting or in our families. And so really that's where I advocate, is for speaking up. And I want to work with men too, because I think if we don't change the conversation for both genders, then nothing's going to change for anybody.
Yes. Yes. And something that you said about, it doesn't matter what situation, you find yourself not speaking up in. If you've been squashed in some way for whatever reason, it's very difficult to find your voice. And women, especially in more male dominated environments. And you're right, we do tend to not want to make waves and not want to make things uncomfortable for anyone else. So yeah. So what is the title of your talk? Like, do you give like a very specific talk when you do get up on a stage and speak, or are there different avenues that you go down?
I have a couple, but the one talk that I'm primarily delivering at the moment is called The Courage to Speak Your Truth.
Yeah.
And it explores the three different stories that we curate in order to that shape us indirectly. So we have our internal story, which is our beliefs, and then the external story that we share because of what we feel is appropriate for others, and then how the cultural story feeds back into us. So if we look at our industry as an example, if we were to look at how many men were on stage, then we could easily take that as a story to say, this is not the industry for me. So until we start to navigate our own beliefs and our own empowerment, then we can't change that external story. So that is fundamentally, I use my own story threaded through that framework so that everyone can have something to take away.
Yeah, yeah. And I can imagine that it hits quite powerfully.
It does. And as I said, it's my truth, but it's so many of our truths. And, what we can all identify with is when there's a gap between our internal story and the external story that we're sharing, that's when disconnect and isolation arise. So when we can minimize that gap and allow for there to be congruency between what we're telling ourselves and what we're sharing with others, well, that's harmony. That's where connection appears. That's where flow happens in teams. So that's primarily what I focus on in my talk and in my program.
I like how you say, that there is a difference between what we're telling ourselves, between that and when we share with others. I can imagine that what we're telling ourselves is a little bit more like having blinkers on, or we're seeing things through a certain filter. But when we share, there's more that is added to the picture, and it becomes I'm struggling to understand how to put it. It's like we gain more understanding about what we've been through.
Yeah, and I use the example often in my training that my mum was a very incredibly strong woman and managed Centrelink offices for her career, so pretty tough job. And I guess because she paved the way, in the 80s as a feminist, and her messaging to me was, that you can do anything, you can be anything, and that served me.
Yeah.
But when I was in very male-dominated industries, that messaging was also telling me to be quiet about my vulnerability and about my capacity to feel nervous. And so I let some bad behavior go in some of those roles because I wasn't sure about what was a trigger for my trauma, what was appropriate behavior, and what I should put up with. And I think that is really quite common for women who want to appear very strong and stoic, but we're still, trying to figure out inside of us what's appropriate and what's not.
Yes, and particularly if, something, awful has happened to us in childhood and we don't know how to navigate those difficult emotions at the time, it sets a pattern of I don't know how to manage, something that feels awkward, and in some cases beyond awkward. So I can imagine that you coming into the picture and saying, hey, it's okay to start talking about this, and not to feel that you have to get it right. You don't have to articulate it correctly. Just starting the conversation is what it's about. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, what we can never be responsible for is other people's reaction to
Yeah.
what we feel and what we say. So, really aligning an ability to, distinguish what within us is our own voice and what's that voice of somebody else is really important because, I know that many of us as speakers, there hasn't been a talk I've ever done that I haven't felt nervous about entering the stage and
Yeah.
standing up there and then just trusting the flow will come in.
Yeah.
And if I listen to the voice of, my anyone who didn't believe in me at that moment, then I probably wouldn't go through with talking. So I have to dig deep to find that strength and
Yeah.
that voice within me that I know has my back. And
Yeah.
we need to do that at different times.
Yes. And the more you do it, the better at it you get.
Yes, indeed. Yes, the quieter that voice gets, but, I do use it as fuel to, really make sure I connect with the audience, so it's not all bad.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, do you have any, like, standout moments where you have been speaking and, you've really connected to someone or your message has really hit someone?
I was fortunate enough to run 2 events earlier this year when I launched my book and had 100 people in the room each time, and I've never experienced a time where so much stillness and silence happened while I was telling my story, and I felt it, I felt like I entered this, cocoon of story and enveloped the audience in a way that can only come when it's from your heart and not your head. So that was pretty special and pretty amazing because the first event, both my children were there to hear me speak, and they hadn't seen me speak publicly before.
Right.
In fact, my daughter, she introduced me and did a welcome to country, and so she's
Oh,
14 and was a school captain in primary school, so she's about well versed with a microphone and well on her way to being hopefully one of those 50% of women on stage by the time it's
yes.
their time.
Wow, that would have been pretty special.
It was really special.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, beyond that, I've been privileged enough to speak. I was asked to speak to a very male dominated room about unconscious bias.
All
So that
right.
was interesting, standing there and looking out at 500 white men between the age of 40 and 50 and thinking, this is how do I make this land for this group as a woman up on stage? So it was a huge challenge, but a really satisfying one because I know I did manage to speak in a way that they could hear me. And so that felt great too.
Yeah, yeah. And, I'm guessing having a lot of speaking experience, it really helped you with that, and you could, pivot where you needed to.
Absolutely, it absolutely, but I say to all of my peers who are in our industry, I guess unless you know yourself and are really clear on what it is that you wanna say, the
Mm.
audience can feel it.
Yes.
That when it's coming from truth, whether it's, whatever it is, whether it's coming from truth, as long as you're authentically you,
Yeah.
then I think that's where, it's about connection. And I know myself, the speakers that I see speak, and it's a lot because I love it so much.
Yeah.
It's not about not making mistakes. It's about, is this person real? Can I
Mm.
feel their authenticity? And so as a speaker, that's absolutely what I aspire to do.
Yeah, yeah. What would be your favorite kind of audience? Like, who do you love to speak to the most?
I People who are curious and thirsty to learn and and are really ready for a new conversation.
Yeah.
So whether that's a group of men or a group of women, but where there's a specific change ready to happen,
Mm.
that's what I feel is important for me. It is about shifting the conversation, and if people walk away with just one phrase in their minds that they can reintegrate into their lives, then it's a successful talk.
Oh, it is, absolutely. And, they don't have to remember everything that you say, as long as they can take something away that really impacts them. Um, so do you have a large diverse range of audiences? So from corporate to community-based, what kind of audiences do you have?
I have, and I've worked in a very diverse corporate environment. So I've spent some time in the mining sector, and so I worked up in Karratha for a couple of years as a consultant up there, and I've ran trainings in that environment and spoken, in been Paris end of of Melbourne, up in and worked for ANZ, and so I've been everywhere from the mining sector to the corporate world in the CBD Melbourne. And I think it doesn't matter what audience it is, as long as and there's definitely a shift of message that happens according to what the audience needs. But
Mm,
again, if there's transparency and congruency, that's all that matters to me, is someone who's really ready to have a real conversation.
yeah.
And because that's what I'm about. I'm kind of a non-bullshit woman who's very honest and very vulnerable, and that's not always everyone's cup of tea, but that's who I am, and that's how my friends know me, that's how my kids know me, and that's definitely how my audience has learned to know me.
Yes, because we're human at the end of the day,
Yeah, that's
and
right.
talking about a very, very human subject,
Mhm.
and it requires vulnerability and that willingness to dig deep for it to, be a worthwhile conversation to have. So yeah, and it's a difficult conversation because of the vulnerability, and as you say, most people will avoid it. So yeah, have you come across anyone who is resisting the conversation at all?
Well, absolutely. If people, I had a situation once during COVID when we were all doing online training
Yeah.
and presenting, and I used Grace Tame, a photo of her, as an example in one of my trainings.
Mhm.
And I'd shared vulnerably, not so much about my own abuse, but I'd shared about my own challenges in very male dominated sectors, and shared some of my stories about male colleagues who'd had issues as well. So it was very gender diverse conversation. But I had a woman afterwards ask me, she suggested that I should have done a trigger warning when I used the photo of Grace Tame, and I emailed straight back and I said, "Look, I'm so sorry if this triggered you. Um, my own story is," and I shared it really vulnerably with her.
Mm.
And it was interesting when she had that piece of the puzzle that I didn't share in the training because it wasn't relevant to this particular training. The way she saw my entire speech was incredibly shifted. And
Yeah.
so I said to her, and she said, "Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. You didn't need to do a trigger warning. Grace Tame's photos everywhere. You didn't talk about her story."
Mm.
And she said, "Thank you for sharing yours privately with me." And
Yeah.
so it wasn't that she pushed back, but I think she helped me open up and made me realize that these are the conversations I really want to have. And I don't believe that in any work environment, we leave our stories at the door when we go and sit in a meeting or have a relationship with our
Mm.
boss. We carry them with us. And
Yes.
so we just need to learn how to really to tame them to serve where we are, but not
Yeah.
have them silence us.
Yeah. We can learn so much from people's responses, can't we?
We
Yeah.
can. Yeah, we
Particularly when
can.
you're in a information giving environment or a teaching environment where you're sharing and training. It's something that lands on people differently, and people are going to take it different ways and take something different that relates to them. And yeah, and good on her for coming and speaking to you about it, because it meant that you could actually, turn the conversation to a positive. So yeah,
Absolutely. We had a couple of emails after that, and it was like I felt really grateful to have her receive my story in a way that she did, and she suggested that I share more of it.
yeah,
And I know not everyone's going to be ready for that. So it's taken a few years of sort of, gently moving my message to this place,
yeah,
and to also suggest that, it's not about using our stories as an excuse for our behavior, but it's about using our stories to connect with each other so that it's more of a bridge than a brick wall between us.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. A bridge, not a brick wall. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's what it's all about. We can build bridges. Um, Kath, what is a takeaway or two for our audience that you could share relating to what you do that you think people would find helpful to know or to think about?
Well, one of the things that in terms of really eliciting and understanding where to begin, it's
Mm,
always with self. And so, really to start to become the witness to your own thoughts
mm,
and ask a couple of simple questions. And the first is the voice that I'm hearing mine? And, this isn't about being,
interesting.
having, several voices in our head, but often it's a school teacher, that we were told once that we did something wrong and we hold on to that as a belief. And it's not until our adult mind questions it that we can actually rewrite that as a narrative that serves us. So, really, next time you feel something uncomfortable and you're hearing a belief, ask yourself if is it really yours? Is
Mm,
it a parent's? Is it a partner's? Is it a bully from primary school? But
mm,
ask yourself, is it yours? And so learning to become a witness of yourself is the first step in any change.
yeah,
And that can be done through questions and writing and meditation and just any kind of movement. But
yeah.
that's where I would begin.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Really great advice because it has the power to cut through everything that you're thinking. It can really clear up the source and then determine the direction you go from there. Go from there. That's really great. Kath, if people wanted to find you and work with you or pick your brains in some way or connect with you, how can they find you?
Well, if you go to my website, all of my social media handles are there. So it's www.bespeak, BESPEAK.AU. And I'm in Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So yeah, come along and join the journey
Yeah,
and hopefully follow the events that I'm speaking at because I
yeah.
really feel passionately about getting this message out and having more honest, vulnerable conversations in our workplace.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a conversation that is definitely worth having and needs to continue. And once again, Kath, what is the name of your book so that everyone can go and look that up?
So the book is called The Courage to Speak Your Truth, Shifting the Narrative on Childhood Sexual Abuse. And I wrote it for survivors, but I also wrote it for people who are supporting survivors
Yeah,
and to want to understand
yeah,
the challenges that their friend or family member may not be able to language yet.
yeah, yeah, perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Kath. It has been an absolute delight chatting with you. And I'm sure that people are going to get a lot out of your book and knowing more about what you do. I think what you do is incredibly important.
Thank you.
So, folks, I hope you've enjoyed this interview. This show goes live every Thursday at 11 a.m. on YouTube and will be uploaded straight to LinkedIn and Facebook. If you need a speaker, then please go to womenspeakers.com.au and you don't have to pay a commission. You can contact your preferred speaker directly and you can search by topic and location. You are also welcome to post a request into our Facebook and LinkedIn groups called Australian Women Speakers. And if you are a speaker or want to be, sign up to our directory and get found. Thanks again for joining us. My name is Rachel Pietsch. Have a great day.